This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth. My friends, the Canadian government may soon have the ability to confiscate your property without the need to link this to any kind of a crime. This is just unbelievable. If you guys thought taxation was theft, just wait till you get a load of this. This is just from the CBC. An incredibly troubling notion, drastic new tool to fight money laundering, alarms civil rights advocates. Expert panel recommends allowing government to confiscate property without linking it to crime. Says here, BC has a $7.4 billion problem. That's the bottom line of two bombshell reports on money laundering released this week. The big question now is, how's the province plans to fight it? Together, the reports make dozens of suggestions for tackling the issue, but civil liberties advocates were alarmed to see something called unexplained wealth orders among the recommendations. These orders go a step beyond civil forfeiture and allow for confiscation without finding the crime. So this is just unbelievable. And joining us on the line to help us understand the implications of this is our good friend John Sneisen at World Alternative Media. John, thanks so much for joining us here today. I want to we're going to break down this article a little bit more. We'll get a little bit more in depth on it, but maybe we could start with the fact that this sounds eerily familiar to something we've heard about in the United States. I believe it's called civil asset forfeiture. Does this sound like something that similar to what they're doing down there in the States?
Yeah, it's a pleasure being on your show again, Dan, and you always put out fantastic content. I just got to say that.
Thank you.
But yeah, no, it's this Dan is of course like a complete copycat, it seems like, of what's happening down in the States with civil asset forfeiture, where you just blatantly confiscate wealth from people without any crime, proven at all. And this is pretty crazy. There was, a lady got stopped with, I think she had like maybe over 10,000 or whatever it was in US dollars in Texas, I believe it was. And she was just going to go and buy something expensive with the cash. But of course, they took that cash to confiscate it. And I think it's more like stealing it. That's what it is, because the police forces around are not getting enough, theft from us, from the taxation that they're getting. So they need to steal more from us through this new civil asset forfeiture, which we can basically call it. It's almost the same thing as happening in the United States, what they are proposing here. And this is a very slippery slope, of course, when you implement all these regulations and rules that blatantly just disregard any rights that we have as individual human beings, and just being able to blatantly confiscate and take whatever wealth we have, either it is our property, our possessions like cars, boats, and maybe your bitcoins, your cryptocurrencies, if they can get a hold and put a gun to your head and get your private keys. I think this is a very dangerous way that the Canadian government is going. And it's no surprise, though, because the Trudeau government has been going down the slippery slope ever since they got in. And they're right now they're talking about blatant gun ban laws as well, in the pipe. So we don't know where this is going to go. But this is, of course, provincial. But I think this is a wet dream for corrupt politicians that we have around, to be able to constantly steal more and more money, because they don't get enough from what we give them already. On top of that, they never really listen to us. They spend way more money than we have in deficit spending and all these programs that they give people free money. I think it's time, Dan, to start to stand up to these people and call them out for who they are. They are fascists, they are communists, they're just blatantly wanting to take over our lives and look down at us. Meanwhile, we are actually the one that gave them the power in the first place. But this is, of course, happened throughout history, where we see guys like Hitler and others got democratically elected, and that's a very dangerous thing that's happening here, where people are just willing to just give up more and more of the actual freedoms that they have done. And I don't know where it is going to stop. I don't think it's going to stop with asset forfeitures or, blatantly taking your possessions or cash, your money, whatever it is. I think it's going to continue on until we actually tell them to stop, and we actually just ignore them and say we had enough of this corrupt government and what they do, and just say, okay, you know what, you can do whatever you want, but we're not gonna listen to you. We're not gonna adhere to your rules. We are gonna live our lives, good lives. We're gonna follow our own rules, which is very simple rules. We're not going to steal. We're not going to be aggressive against anybody else. It's very, very simple rules that you can apply, and it's almost the 10 Commandments. I know you're Christian, Dan, and it's just a simple life rules instead of the tens upon thousands of rules that have been written against us, and we're probably breaking a couple of rules now, whatever we're talking about that.
Well, they're clearly trying to put pen to paper to make this law so that they can kind of like a mafia just have the right to steal from you in their view. According to the article here, it says this is not necessarily new. It says here the province already has multiple options for confiscating property linked to crime. BC Finance Minister Carol James told the CBC News in an email that the government will consider adding UWOs to the list. The criminal code has long allowed for forfeiture of property when someone has been convicted of a crime. Then it says BC also has a civil forfeiture system, which means someone doesn't need to be convicted, charged, or even arrested to lose their belongings to the government, as long as the province can prove on a balance of probabilities that there's a connection to crime. The strength of that evidence is tested only if someone files a dispute to the forfeiture notice, which is allowed only when the value of the forfeiture is under $75,000. So, again, I see other similarities in this as well, not just with the United States. Cyprus comes to mind, because there they literally just took money out of the bank accounts of people there. Is it comparable to what happened in Cyprus in a sense a little bit, except where it's property instead of money?
Well, it's very similar. It's anything. What happened in Cyprus was a blatant tax or a cash grab from the. Well, it wasn't really the government even. It was actually the two banks. It was Larnaca Bank and Bank of Cyprus that were derivative. They were betting with derivatives on the failure of the Greek bonds that they were not going to be able to pay, and of course they got bailed out by Deutsche Bank, by Societe Generale, all these banks in Europe. And what ended up happening is that the people that were depositors and the shareholders of those two banks, they had to pay up in a major way. The people that actually had saved up money, they had their bank accounts pretty full of money, and a lot of them had over 100,000 euros, which is the insured part. Those people, they lost between 30 to 80% of their deposits, depending on I don't know what it was that gave the difference of what they were going to lose. Then on top of that, you had the insured depositors, which we have here in Canada with the CDIC. They actually lost about, I think it was 6.9%. Don't quote me 100% on that, but I think it was very close to 6.9%. If not, it was. And that was just taken out, even though they were insured. They were told that they were insured by the local, the European Central Bank's insurance corporation that they have over there in Cyprus, and they still took the money out of the bank accounts. This is what I've warned about in my Canada, the greatest economy in the world ? Where I actually warned about the CDIC's lack of funds to protect against failures of banks. And when I the stats back in 2015, early 2016, I found out that they had 0.39% of all the deposits under 100,000. All those bank accounts had only 0.39% of those in a fund available to save a bank. The problem is if you get a major bank like RBC or TD or BMO, whoever it is of our major 5 banks, you're going to have a serious problem on your hands. It's going to be way more. But don't worry, the government was going to put in, I think it was like $3.1 billion or something. I forgot the exact number, but I think it increased it to about 2.9 or 3.1%. Even though that you did that, there would still be problems. And then let's say that a second bank failed. Well, there's no money to protect you. And this is the problem. We believe that we are protected and insured against like what happened in Cyprus, which was a blatant failure of the bank and stupid monetary policy of the bank. And of course, what we got to understand, since the 1980s, there used to be savings and loan banks and there used to be investment banks. So they were separated. But today, after, Bill Clinton, put together and let them get back together again, now they're like banks are just allowed to do whatever they want with your money, with your deposit or money bit, because as soon as you put it in, you actually borrow it to the bank. It's not yours anymore. And that's what most people are failing to understand here, is that when you put your money into your checking account, that money then gets lended to the bank and they have a claim that they now have to give back to you when you want it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the funds could be there at that time. And this is a huge risk, of course, that you were talking about Cyprus, that could very much happen in Canada, that I covered in great detail in my book.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about some solutions for how we can protect ourselves in the lead up to this. Because, I mean, if they manage to pull this off, they can literally take our stuff without connecting us to a crime, unless we figure out a way to protect ourselves before they come and get it, and protect our stuff, our assets, our money. And so let's get into some of the avenues and the ways that you can do that. And I think that blockchain tech is one of these potentials that I think the government is struggling with now. They want in on it, but they want to make sure it's centralized. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the decentralized aspect of crypto and how that could actually help us protect ourselves from theft from the government.
Yeah, no, 100%. The problem here is, of course, again, with decentralized, let's just mention the problem with decentralized before we go into the really good stuff about it. The problem is, if you remember what just happened a couple of days ago at the Binance hack, for example, or the hack of any centralized exchanges out there that people have their money at when they do trade, between different cryptocurrencies, whatever they do with their money on those exchanges, it's the same thing. It's the same darn thing as putting your money in a bank account, where you actually are you don't even hold your private keys at the moment, and so you have no rights actually to that money, because it's all in the hands of that central entity. So that is a huge problem that is getting fixed actually with these decentralized exchanges. The problem there is that you need more volume for people to be able to trade and then find the right trade patterns to match each other in order to do the right trades. But I think that's part of the future that we got to work on, is the decentralization that you're talking about versus centralization. And as you see now, when you have, for example, I forgot his name, Dan, what the representative from the United States Senate, he was talking about banning cryptocurrency buying in the United States, and also the potential to sell it or hold it. And the funny part about that is that he actually was completely right in what he said, is that the Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are subverting the power of the United States dollar. And I think it was funny how the rally up that we just recently saw came at the same time almost as he mentioned how Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is actually subverting the power of the United States dollar and giving the power back to the people. It was pretty hilarious to listen to, and he was like just spot on. But of course, he wanted to ban it. But that comes back to understanding, how great cryptocurrencies are and how great the blockchain decentralized technologies are, because we are, and of course, you've been censored firsthand at Facebook, where you got your page taken down. You've seen firsthand how centralization of power, how centralization and then utilization of political kind of aspect to different monopolies of social media out there, how that has been detrimental, and how that is literally trying to comb out the information that they don't like, and the people like you, people like Alex Jones and a whole bunch of others are getting heavily censored on these platforms that have become, the major monopolies of social medias, like the Twitter, the Facebook, the LinkedIn. You also have payment systems like Patreon that we've relied on to get monetary help from people that really likes us, because we don't have the big, massive corporate sponsors that are pushing their agendas with mainstream media. We actually have to be reliant on the person out there that really loves our content. And if you do really good, we actually will get paid for it. But the problem is they're trying to censor on us all those different aspects, like the transaction side of it, the information side of it. So they're coming at us from all different sides here, and they're trying to stop us from having the power to, give us the individual rights to transfer information, to transfer wealth at any given moment between each other, because the banks, the government, they don't like that. They want to have full over control. And let me just, before I let the word over to you, let me talk about what's happening over here in Canada. And I went to Ottawa, of course, recently, and there I reported on something that just happened between the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which is the Central Bank of Singapore, and Bank of Canada, the central bank in Canada. They had the first ever intercontinental, so inter-country, like bilateral swap of currencies through using blockchain technology. What this is, and of course, the technology, if you want to look it up, it's called Project Jasper at the Central Bank of Canada. It's fun how they name it after a beautiful national park, which is so far away from what they're actually creating, which is a enslavement grid of this cashless centralized system that they plan. Because we were talking about money laundering when we first started this video, and of course that plays a huge into money laundering. If you ever read the book The Curse of Cash by Kenneth Rogoff, which is kind of was the first moves before they really saw the potential of blockchain, that was to ban cash and try to make it electronic. Well, what are we seeing now? We're seeing several projects around the world, including the E-krona at the Central Bank of Sweden, trying to create digital cash, blockchain cash, but it's centralized. And of course, they have the potential of printing as much currency as they want within that system. And it's not like Bitcoin or Litecoin or other decentralized currencies that actually have a cap of how much you can print. They can, of course, continue to print this currency. Meanwhile, they have us sucked into this digital grid where they could, okay, we don't like Dan, we don't like John, let's just get rid of them out of the whole economy. And then you don't have any access to go and buy groceries, any access to go buy, go and use transportation. It's very similar to what happened in with the Sesame Credit in China, where now, of course, through social media control and through the more and more digitalization of cash also in China, they are able to put in, Orwellian laws that they literally, if you don't abide by the rules or say the right things, now you will not have access to certain things in society.
Well, as you said, they've already admitted they're essentially afraid of Bitcoin and its potential to overthrow the government, essentially. But they're looking into blockchain tech in a way to co-opt it and make sure that they can control it. And that's why it's important for us to also look into that same technology in a way to steer it in a direction that's going to be beneficial to us. So I want to move us on now to something very exciting that you have launched, and this is in fact a blockchain-based cryptocurrency conference that's going to be held in Winnipeg. It's the first of its kind to be held there. So I want to get into a little bit of that. Tell us about this incredible event that you have organized coming up very soon in October.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to announce that on October 11th to 13th in Winnipeg, of all places, in the middle of nowhere, we are doing finally a big conference, because, of course, that's the Torontonians and the Vancouverites that have been doing that, which they're major metropolitan areas. But it's time to bring something to the center of Canada, the transportation heart of Canada, where everything moves through in order to distribute it mostly throughout Canada. And so I was saying to myself, and I talked to a lot of people there that wanted to put something on, but they weren't sure. They were afraid that they weren't going to succeed. So I said, okay, it's time to put something really exciting together. So I decided to put on a crypto/blockchain now / also a financial technology conference, where we're going to talk about the future and what is going to happen, the move between are we going to centralize things? Are we actually going to decentralize things? And we're going to put forward ideas. We're going to put forward a lot of great ideas that's out there that's going to give and potentially empower people, like, for example, the indigenous people. Think about that they have their own cryptocurrency that they could use instead of being government slaves that they are now. You could heavily empower, the disempowered people around the world, and that's going to be a major focus of our conference, is to try to empower those people ideas to then take home to their local communities and say that we had enough of this scam of the government and decentralization and then try to give power back to their local communities instead of not now they're just slaved by handouts from the government. I think this could be a fantastic way of not only the indigenous people and what's happening there, but also for everyone out in other local communities or big cities to then be able to get away from the banker grid that's centralized and that have capital controls within it, limits on how much we can transfer within between each other, what we can do, all these rules and regulations. We can move those away. And also we're going to be talking about the derivatives that's out there, how bad that is, and this what blockchain could do to actually empower and give a real fair market price on things like gold and silver that is so heavily undervalued the actual price, but we see only the paper price based on 400 more contracts that what exists in the physical metal. Mm-hmm. So we are gonna go into all these aspects, but not only that, we're gonna go into governance of what's happening with communities, what you can do to implement it, to remove the government power and give the power back. The voting power could be just a person to person on these ledgers, and it could be completely decentralized and not controllable by any central entities. What blockchain can do on both sides, it could be extremely tyrannical and dangerous. But on the other side, if you use it for good, it could be empowering and freedom building that we've never seen in history, Dan. We never really had true freedom because we always have put in rulers of ourselves. But what we're seeing now is we have nations like, for example, Liberland. We have with Jed Lichka from Liberland coming over here and talking about what they're doing with blockchain and how they have plans to revolutionize the way government is run. On top of that, we have fantastic speakers coming out, of course, like David Morgan. We have Andy Hoffman, that is an expert on crypto, but also he's been in precious metals. He's been on Wall Street for many years, so he really understands a lot of things that's going on. But before I go more into the whole content of the conference, I just want to let the word over to you and see what else you want to know.
Well, I just wanted to say it's an exciting time for such a conference. I'm really glad you launched it. In fact, I want to let people know that I am going to be speaking there, actually. I want to let people know about the fact that, how blockchain tech and cryptocurrencies in particular have changed the face of the media, and in particular have changed how independent media operate and the relationship between indie media and mainstream media. And we're going to really break that down. And I hope that you guys can travel out there, come on out there, meet me, meet some of the other speakers. So, John, maybe you could just wrap it up telling us a little bit about what people can expect to get out of the conference and where they can go to get tickets for this. And I'm not sure if you set up an affiliate code for me or not, but if you do, you can let them know where they can get tickets from there as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. No. If you come out to the conference in Winnipeg, it's going to be, of course, groundbreaking information that anybody that wants freedom in their lives is going to heavily rely on this information for the future and the benefit of themselves and how they could build their own societies besides the current structure. And then slowly over time, the big, government structure will become more and more irrelevant because we've built up this other infrastructure around ourselves that we just don't need governments anymore to control us. And that's going to be, a huge part of it. And of course, another part of it will also be how we're going to, benefit from this and use blockchain technology to take away censorship around the world. We're going to, of course, talk about blockchain technology and how businesses can implement it to really make their businesses a lot more efficient and easier and a lot more cheaper for businesses to transport things around the world, and for the people to actually, and more transparent businesses.
Maybe we could figure out how to stop civil asset forfeitures as well, using blockchain tech and whatever the CBC and these expert panels are recommending. Maybe we could discuss that too.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's going to be a great conference where, of course, I'm going to talk actually kind of a little bit what we touched upon right now. I'm going to talk about the future of blockchain and how we had two choices. We could either centralize under a big tyrannical government, or we could decentralize under a total freedom-minded society where we have individual rights. And then, of course, we have. Let me just mention a couple of the speakers so people know more who's coming out there. We have our great friend Anthem Hayek-Blanchard, which has built a supply chain for businesses to use. And he's also built a stable coin that is backed by gold, which is very interesting. And of course, Anthem Blanchard's dad, he was the guy that made gold legal to own again by individuals in the United States. So this is not only, big for, society, but it was a tremendous way to actually give the power back to the population. So he is, of course, one of the guys that, I don't know why not more people know about Anthem, but because he's so humble about himself. But Anthem is really probably one of my top speakers for sure at this conference. So we got Anthem coming out. Then we got our friend Rodrigo Ambrisi from South America, where he's revolutionizing the way people are using payment systems through Dash, of course, with getting away from these massive corrupt governments that are printing currency out of their ears down there, and he's helping them, committing to a more stable type of currency down there, and actually be able to transact more freely without government interference. We got Daniel Case from EOS Nation, so we're going to talk about EOS there, which is really cool. Then we got a hedge fund guy that's created a hedge fund for cryptocurrencies. We got a local from Winnipeg, a local expert on blockchain. He's helped over 30 different cryptocurrencies and tokens out there to get off the ground and build them. He's actually an expert on how to build it. So he's going to talk about the benefits and how businesses can build blockchain structures within them to highly benefit and profit from this revolutionary technology. We got a guy that's invented the first, this is interesting, he actually invented the first crowdfunding of real estate, which is revolutionary because so many people are locked up because they're not accredited investors. They can't even touch real estate investments, but he's creating a revolutionary way of actually getting in on a very small scale versus what is currently set in place to, limit people from that are disempowered from actually, moving upwards in society. Then we got local experts on crypto. We got Luis Fernando Mises is coming out. We have a local tax lady that's going to talk about the benefits of using crypto in your business to avoid, paying too much taxes. And then, of course, we got our friend, which is building something that we are benefit heavily from, which is Float, which is a decentralized social media system, a streaming system, and so on for media, for independent media to actually thrive instead of being shut down everywhere. We try to voice our opinion. So yeah, that's currently what I have for the conference, and I think it's going to be super exciting, not only to listen to speakers, but just a network within Canada and meet like-minded people, not just for crypto and blockchain, because that's where it's very different. We never really had a conference that is focused more on the empowerment of individualism and freedom, because that is our number one focus that we have at the conference that we're doing here. And of course, there is a code that you can get, of course, with Dan, which is PFT. And if you put in that coupon code, you'll get $10 off, and you'll help Dan make a little bit of money as well to make sure that he, as an independent media, can move forward and give you the best possible information out there.
Awesome. Is it $10 or 10%? I think you said
10%. Oh, sorry, 10%.
Yeah, 10%. So save 10%, guys, when you use promo code PFT. I'm really looking forward to this one. As you've heard, there's a lot of great speakers there. I'm going to be speaking with David Morgan very soon. We'll be talking before that conference So stay tuned for that video. So once again, John, thanks for helping us break down this civil asset forfeiture plan that they have coming down the pipes here in Canada potentially. And I really look forward to the conference. Folks, links will be located in the description below to where you can get tickets for this. We hope to see you there. Once again, John Sneisen from World Alternative Media, thanks for talking to us.
Pleasure.
We all want truth. The truth will set you free.